Right now, in the waters off the coast of Qatar, the single largest energy construction project in human history is underway. It is called the North Field Expansion, and by the time it is complete, it will produce enough liquefied natural gas to heat and power millions of homes across Europe, Asia, and beyond, every single year. The total price tag, conservatively estimated at $100 billion. But here is what the press releases don't tell you. Projects of this scale, in this region, almost never come in on budget, not because of incompetence, not because of corruption, but because of 5 specific forces that make the Arabian Gulf one of the most challenging and expensive places on Earth to build anything. Today, we are going inside the world's biggest energy project and revealing exactly why Gulf oil and gas megaprojects almost always cost more than anyone plans. To understand the North Field expansion, you first need to understand what the North Field actually is. Sitting beneath the waters of the Persian Gulf, the North Field is the single largest natural gas reservoir ever discovered on Earth. It covers an area of approximately 6,000 square kilometers, larger than the entire country of Qatar itself, and it holds an estimated 1,760 trillion cubic feet of recoverable natural gas. That is enough to supply the entire world's current gas consumption for roughly 50 years. The field is shared with Iran, which calls its portion the South Pars Field. Together, they represent the most valuable single hydrocarbon deposit in human history. Qatar began developing the North Field in the 1990s and built its entire economy around it. Today, Qatar is the second largest exporter of liquefied natural gas in the world, competing directly with Australia and the United States for global market share. But by 2019, Qatar looked at the global energy landscape and made a decision that shocked the industry. They announced not just an expansion, but a doubling of production capacity. The plan: increase Qatar's LNG output from 77 million tons per year to 142 million tons per year by the end of this decade. That is the equivalent of building an entirely new Qatar-sized gas industry on top of the one that already exists. The projects involved North Field East, North Field South, and North Field West together represent the most ambitious energy infrastructure program ever attempted by a single country. And every one of them faces the same 5 challenges that have driven Gulf energy projects over budget for the past 50 years. The first driver of cost overruns in the Gulf is the most obvious and the most underestimated: heat. During summer months in Qatar, Kuwait, and the UAE, outdoor temperatures regularly exceed 48 degrees Celsius. On exposed metal construction sites, surface temperatures can reach 70 degrees or higher. In these conditions, international health and safety standards restrict outdoor manual labor to the early morning hours, typically between 5 a.m. and 9 a.m. After that, workers must move indoors or stop work entirely. This means that on a Gulf mega project, you lose, at minimum, 60% of your available working hours during the summer months. For a project that runs across multiple summers, the cumulative schedule impact is measured not in weeks, but in months. But it gets more complicated. Heat does not just slow workers, it affects the materials themselves. Concrete poured in extreme heat sets too quickly, creating structural weakness. Steel expands beyond tolerance, making precision alignment impossible. Sensitive electronic components, control systems, sensors, instrumentation must be kept in temperature-controlled enclosures at all times, adding a cost and complexity. On the North Field expansion projects, Qatar Energy solved part of this problem by scheduling intensive construction phases for the winter months, October through March, and shifting summer work to indoor prefabrication and offshore installation where possible. But scheduling around the climate adds coordination complexity that always carries a price. The second major driver of cost overruns is labor. specifically the challenge of sourcing, housing, feeding, transporting, and managing tens of thousands of workers in a region with a small local population. The Gulf states, Qatar, UAE, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, have relatively small citizen populations. The oil and gas industry's workforce is overwhelmingly made up of expatriate workers, engineers from Europe and North America, skilled tradespeople from South and Southeast Asia, and laborers from across Africa and South Asia. On a project the size of the North Field expansion, peak construction workforce can reach 35,000 to 50,000 people, working simultaneously across multiple sites. Every one of those workers must be recruited internationally, issued visas, flown in, accommodated in purpose-built camps, fed 3 meals a day, transported to and from the worksite, medically insured, and, eventually, flown home. In 2021, the global pandemic disrupted this system almost completely. Borders closed, flights were grounded, worker camps had to be isolated to prevent outbreaks. Projects that depended on rotating international workforces suddenly could not rotate anyone. The North Field expansion projects, along with virtually every other Gulf megaproject running at that time, absorbed massive unplanned costs from COVID-related delays, testing protocols, and workforce restructuring. The lesson the industry learned is one that keeps being relearned. When your workforce is entirely imported, any disruption to global movement hits your project harder than anywhere else in the world. The third driver is one that surprises people who have never worked in the Gulf. The ground itself. Much of the Arabian Peninsula's coastline, where the majority of oil and gas infrastructure is built, sits on a geological formation called Sabkha. It is a salt flat terrain, soft, unstable, and saturated with saline water just below the surface. Building on Sabkha is an engineer's nightmare. Conventional foundations sink, steel corrodes at accelerated rates from the salt exposure. Underground pipelines and cables require special protective coatings that add cost to every meter installed. In Abu Dhabi, where offshore fields like those connected to Dar's Island feed into onshore processing facilities built near the coast, Sabkha treatment and ground improvement works have added hundreds of millions of dollars to infrastructure projects that originally underestimated the subsurface conditions. In Qatar, similar conditions exist along the northern coastline, where LNG processing trains must be connected to port facilities. The consistent mistake in project budgeting is treating ground improvement as a minor line item, a few weeks of work before the real construction begins. In reality, foundation and ground treatment programs on Gulf coastal projects routinely take 2 to 3 times longer than planned, delaying the entire project behind them. What looks like flat, empty desert is rarely as simple as it appears. The fourth driver is one that exists on mega projects everywhere in the world, but hits Gulf projects particularly hard. It is called scope growth, and it is the single most consistent cause of budget overruns in the history of the oil and gas industry. Scope growth happens when the original project definition changes during execution. A pipeline that was planned for a certain diameter gets upgraded to handle future capacity. A control room designed for 50 operators gets expanded to accommodate 80. An offshore platform designed for 15 years of production life gets upgraded to 25. Each change sounds reasonable in isolation. A slightly bigger pipe here, an extra floor on the accommodation module there, additional safety systems in response to updated regulations. But in the construction industry, late changes are catastrophically expensive. Reworking a design that is 60% complete can cost 5 to 10 times more than getting it right in the first place. On the North Field expansion, Qatar Energy has been disciplined by historical standards, locking in project scope early and resisting the pressure to add features during execution. This is a direct lesson learned from watching other Gulf megaprojects unravel. Kuwait's Al Zour refinery, one of the largest refineries ever built, is a textbook example of what happens when scope discipline breaks down. planned at a cost of $9 billion. It was eventually delivered at more than $16 billion. The main causes: design changes during construction, contractor disputes, overchanged work, and repeated schedule extensions that compounded costs with every passing month. The fifth and final driver is one that became impossible to ignore after 2020: supply chain fragility. Gulf megaprojects rely almost entirely on manufactured components: vessels, modules, turbines, heat exchangers, control systems that are built in fabrication yards across South Korea, China, India, and Europe, then shipped thousands of kilometers to the project site. This model works extremely well when global supply chains are stable. Ships run on schedule, steel prices are predictable, fabrication yards have capacity, delivery windows are met. But when global supply chains break, as they did spectacularly during the pandemic and again during the energy crisis of 2022, Gulf projects absorb the pain immediately. Steel prices that doubled in 18 months, fabrication yards with no available slots for 2 years, shipping costs that increased by 500% at peak, control system components, many manufactured in a small number of highly specialized facilities, stuck in ports or simply unavailable. For the North Field expansion, Qatar Energy responded by placing procurement orders years earlier than conventional project timelines would suggest, essentially reserving fabrication capacity and locking in material prices before the market could move against them. It is an approach that adds upfront cost, but it is far cheaper than the alternative: watching your project sit idle, waiting for a heat exchanger that the fabrication yard cannot deliver for 18 months. The North Field expansion will eventually succeed. Qatar has the financial reserves, the technical partners, and the political will to see it through. But its final cost, like almost every Gulf megaproject before it, will be higher than the number on the original budget sheet. Not then because anyone failed, but because the Arabian Gulf is one of the most demanding construction environments on Earth. The heat, the labor model, the ground conditions, the pressure to add scope, and the exposure to global supply chains, each one adds cost. Together, they make even the most well-managed megaproject an exercise in disciplined adaptation. The projects that succeed are not the ones that avoid these challenges, they are the ones that see them coming. If you found this useful, subscribe to Oil and Gas Explained. Next week, we are going inside a question that the entire industry is arguing about right now. What happens to oil and gas workers when the energy transition actually arrives? See you then.